Hey there guys, Fresh Pilot here today with another video on Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. Now today we're going to be looking at the best graphic settings you can possibly have for Cold War. Now we are going to be lowering the settings, but there are a few other things we can look at to make your game really pop, look great, and also get some better FPS in there. I've had these settings for quite a while now, so I've got everything on low, but it genuinely feels like I'm playing on ultra settings. So it's really worth having a look at and changing these few things what I'm about to show you. So we've got one which is on the control panel, on the Nvidia control panel, the actual in-game settings themselves, and some things on the GeForce experience hub, which all sort of merge together to make a really nice, smooth, vibrant gameplay. So without further ado guys, let's get into it, and I hope you enjoy the video. Okay then guys, so here we are actually at the desktop first before we head into the game. There is one setting we need to change first, so if you right click anywhere in your desktop and bring up the Nvidia control panel, unless you've got an AMD graphics card, then just skip over this step. You want to go to the left and you've got display and adjust desktop color settings. So on that menu you'll see something called digital vibrance. So as default this is set to 50%, and as you can see the apps down here, they sort of look a little bit washed out at the bottom of my screen. So Steam, Chrome, Mail, they all look a little bit washed out. If you slowly bring that up to 85%, you'll see their colour pop in a little bit more, which is what I have it at. So what that does is it just makes everything a little bit brighter, helps identify enemies if they're hiding behind an object or head glitching, something like that. You'll just be able to identify them a little bit better. You can put it up to 100, but I tend to find that almost is too bright and it can make the colours sort of merge into one. So I think 85% is just the sweet spot to help you identify enemies. Okay then guys, here we are in the Call of Duty Cold War graphic settings. Now first of all, I just want to say I run a Nvidia 3070 graphics card, which is a relatively high-end graphics card. It's not the best, it's not the worst. I could easily get away with running quite high settings on this and still get good frames, but I don't. I run very low settings, just like anybody who'd run, say, like a 1060 or possibly a 2060, something like that. Now the reason I do that is you want to put as little load on your system as possible. So when I click my mouse, I want to make sure what's happening on my screen is happening as instant and as snappy as possible. And also I want to make sure I'm getting as many frames as possible, because frames win games. Especially when you're on computer, as you have that advantage over a console player who may possibly only be getting 30 frames if they're on a 30 Hz TV screen, which a lot of people are. Obviously gaming monitors, you can go up to 240 hertz now, so we're getting faster in terms of our response times, which gives us that competitive advantage over other people. So we want to make sure we exploit that where we can. So as I say, I'm running a 144 hertz monitor, so I keep my refresh rate at that. Gameplay VSync, you want that disabled. What that does is it can increase input lag. As I say, we want to keep that as minimal as possible. Don't worry about VSync, it won't affect your gameplay at all if you have that disabled. Menu VSync, again, go ahead and disable that. And Nvidia low latency, you want that boosted. Now that'll put a bit more strain on your graphics card, take it off the processor, and you'll get that faster response time and less latency between you and your screen. Now display resolution, set that to whatever native resolution you have. Mine's a 1080p monitor, so I have that at 1080p. Aspect ratio, automatic, that'll automatically detect what you are running. Now this is an interesting one, colorblind modes. You don't have to touch this if you don't want to, but I think it makes it easier to identify enemies. So if I click into colorblind modes and go across to Tritanophia, I butchered that completely, apologies, and you can select various different colours for enemies, yourself, party colours, and it can just help identify them a little bit easier on the map. So I have me as green, just because I like the colour green. That's literally it. Ally colour, blue, but the most important one is enemy colour, because it can really help identify an enemy. Say if they've just ran behind a rock or something like that, or any sort of object, it can just sort of pinpoint their name tag out a little bit easier, just so you can lock onto them and try and get the kill a little bit faster. Party colour, again, set that to whatever. I just have it the same as ally colour. But that is really, it's completely up to you whether you want to change anything like this. It really only affects the colours of friendlies, enemies, and if you're playing a game like Domination, sites. So yeah, completely up to you. Moving on, field of view. Again, this is preference. The higher you put field of view, the more strain it will actually have on your computer as it needs to render more for the screen. But I play on 120 as it gives you a nice broad view of what's going on around you, easy to spot enemies. If you want to, I know a lot of people sort of play 105, 110, absolutely fine. Again, preference. If you have it lower, you will get slightly more frames, very marginal, but again, preference for you on that one. ADS field of view, I have that affected. Brightness up at 75. Frame rate limit, you want to set that to custom, and then down here you want to match your frame rates of your monitor. So again, my refresh rate is 144 Hz, so I set my custom frame rate as 144. Now there's no point of having this up at 300 or just having it, trying to render as many frames as it can possibly do, because there's no point to that. You're just asking too much of your computer and it will not give you any benefit at all. So at 144 my computer sets it at that. It's not trying to run any more frames, it's not trying to stretch to 300, it's just happy at 144 and I'm not asking too much of it. Now if you've got a 144 Hz monitor, but say you're only getting sort of 125 to 330 frames, you might be best setting that at 120 so you get a constant frame rate. That way you're not getting any stutters. It's nice, you're not asking too much of your computer. Your computer's nice and level. It's not drawing too much power. So that's always something good to bear in mind there. Menu custom frame rate 60. Minimized frame rate. Again, you could probably drop that down to 30 to be honest. That way you're asking less of your computer if you're doing any background tasks, such as you've got Google Chrome open or something like that, which you shouldn't do when you're gaming anyway. Texture quality, I set that on medium. Again, partly down to I've got a 3070. You could put that on low, but I think medium just helps identify enemies a little bit better. If you want those extra frames, drop that down to low or possibly lowest. Model quality, low. Special effects quality, I have that on medium. Screen space reflection, low. Object view distance, I have that on medium. Again, if you're on a lower end system, drop that down to low. It won't make a difference. You'll still see enemies the same. It's all good on that one. Water tessellation disabled. Volumetric lighting low. Shadow quality low. Dynamic shadows disabled. Special effect shadows disabled. Weapon shadow disabled. Ray tracing, you want all that off because it asks a heck of a lot of your computer. I know a lot of you won't have a card where it enables ray tracing anyway, so that'll all be disabled. And then again, if you're playing the campaign and you've got one of these new RTX cards, it's definitely worth whacking that up to ultra just to enjoy the campaign. But when it comes to multiplayer, fast-paced games, you don't want any ray tracing. It's just easy to keep it off, keep the frames, don't ask too much of your system, and just get on some mad kill streaks. Nvidia DLSS, again, it's only if you have an Nvidia card that this one will affect you. I have mine on quality just because, again, I get the 144 Hz and the 144 frames, and I find it helps me identify enemies a little bit better than it would on performance, which is what I'd recommend if you have got this setting with a lower end graphics card. If not, your anti-aliasing quality, butchered that. You want that at around medium. You don't need that on too high. Again, it will impact your frames. Ambient oculation quality, you want that disabled. Motion blur, keep that off. You do not want motion blur. As I say, I remember it from my console days. You will find yourself a lot more accurate, a lot more able to pinpoint enemies if you have motion blur off for obvious reasons. Motion blur quality low. Subsurface scattering disabled. Order independent transparency, I have that on low. VRAM usage, keep that at 80%. Display gamma and display adapter, just keep that as it is. So you want to go ahead and apply those new settings. Okay, now we've changed those in-game settings, there is a few more things we can do just to make the game pop a little bit more, help identify those enemies, and just make the experience that little bit better. So what you want to do is you want to press Alt-Z on your keyboard. This will bring up the GeForce Experience panel. On the left you've got Game Filter. At the top you've got 1 to 3. Select whichever profile you want, it doesn't matter. Click Add Filter and you want to find Sharpen, Brightness, Contrast and Colour on the drop down box. So there's your drop down box. Select those 3 options and then go with these settings I'm about to show you. So Sharpen, you want that at 60% and ignore Film Grain at 15%. Brightness and Contrast, Exposure 0%, Contrast 0%, Highlights 32, Shadows minus 100% and Gamma at 0%. The shadows on minus 100%, that is a really important one, as if you're playing a map like Satellite, where there's lots of shadows, lots of caves, people wearing dark clothing, it makes them a little bit hard to spot. If you put that down to 100, it'll basically remove those shadows, making the people much easier to see. Any enemy targets, you'll be able to see them a lot easier than you would prior. On colour, you want to put that at 0% for tint colour, tint intensity 0%, temperature 0, and vibrance 100. Now, after you've done that, you will notice a massive improvement in your game. May take a little bit of getting used to, but as I say, you'll be able to identify enemies easier, colours will pop a lot more. Once you've lowered all your settings in game, this will just make it look like more of a quality game without putting any effect on your frame rates. So it's definitely well worth doing. I hope you've enjoyed these graphic settings, and I hope it improves your in-game experience. I'm Fresh Pilot, and enjoy the rest of your day.
These my dollars make it hurt.